Hello Nigerians, we have a breaking news and this is very serious. The Anti-Graft Agency, ICPC, has just named the civil servant they believe helped one man walk a fake federal agency straight into the heart of government, into the Federal Secretariat, into the federal budget, into the Central Bank of Nigeria itself. Before you do anything else, stay with me till the end of this one, because this story has layers, and if you leave early, you will miss the part that actually explains how something like this could even happen in a system with so many checks on paper. This is about Adeyemi, the man at the center of the now disowned Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council, and it is landing at a very sensitive time, right when Nigerians are already asking hard questions about how much they can trust the paperwork coming out of their own government offices. Now, before I go further, if this channel has been useful to you, do me this one favor. Hit that like button, and if you have not subscribed, subscribe now, because we are about to unpack a story that touches Budget Office, Head of Service, Accountant General, CBN, and the presidency itself. Now, back to the news. So, let us set the scene properly. The organization in question is called the Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council, PFIPC for short. And here is the first fact you need to hold on to. The presidency says this body was never established by any law, never created by any executive order, never authorized by any valid government instrument. In plain Nigerian English, this agency does not exist on paper, officially at all. Yet somehow, this same non-existent agency had an office inside the Federal Secretariat in Abuja. It had a line in government financial systems. It was working its way toward a place in the 2026 federal budget. Ask yourself, how does a thing that does not exist manage to get that far into a functioning bureaucracy? That question is exactly what President Bola Tinubu wanted answered, which is why after the presidency publicly distanced itself from both the organization and from Adeyemi, the man calling himself its Director General, the president ordered the ICPC, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, to investigate. What you are hearing today comes from the interim report of that investigation. Now here is where the documentary trail begins, and I want you to follow the dates carefully, because dates matter in a story like this. According to the ICPC, Adeyemi's push for official recognition started in November 2024. That is when he first approached the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, the OAGF, asking for three specific things: an administrative code, self-accounting status, and approval to open accounts with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Think about what that means. Those three things together are essentially the keys to the government's financial house. To support that request, investigators say Adeyemi submitted a package of documents: an appointment letter, an establishment instrument, and a letter written on State House letterhead, purportedly signed by someone named Akambi Adewale. Here is the fact, stated plainly the way ICPC has stated it. Investigators say no such person as Akambi Adewale exists in the record they could find. And a forensic examination of that letter, according to the commission, showed that it was actually signed by Adeyemi himself. So the allegation on the table is that a man forged a State House document, invented a signatory who does not exist, and used that forged document to knock on the door of one of the most powerful financial offices in the federal government. Now, despite those red flags, a fictional signatory, a forged header letter, the ICPC says the documents were still used to process Adeyemi's applications. And this is where the story stops being just about one man and starts being about the system around him. Here are the facts as documented. On the 27th of May 2025, the OAGF granted the purported agency self-accounting status. It assigned the organization an administrative code 0111062001, and it approved an authorized establishment along with a recruitment waiver. Those approvals are what opened the door for PFIPC to secure a place in the 2026 federal budget and to gain access to official government financial systems. The OAGF went further. It created a government-integrated financial management information system platform, what civil servants call GIFMIS, for this organization, and it also set up what is called a sub-treasury account. And it directed the Central Bank of Nigeria to open 2 domiciliary accounts for PFIPC, following a request from the organization itself. Now, to be fair to the CBN, and this is important for balance, the Apex Bank later told the House of Representatives that those accounts were never actually activated because the required authorized signatories were never provided. So on that one point, the system did hold, even if only at the very last gate. Now, let us get to the part everyone is talking about, the names. Because ICPC did not just investigate paperwork, they investigated people. 3 civil servants specifically over how the authorized establishment and recruitment waiver for PFIPC was secured. The first is Rose Achem, a senior administrative officer to the Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation. The second is Patricia Akigbe, an assistant director in the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. The third is Mimi Abu, Director of Organization Design and Development at the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, the OHCSF. I want to stress this clearly because it matters. What follows is what ICPC is alleging based on its interim findings. These 3 women have not been convicted of anything. This is an allegation stage. But the details as laid out by investigators are worth walking through because they show exactly how a scheme like this is said to have moved through the corridors of government. According to the commission, Rose Achem introduced Patricia Akigbe to Mimi Abu, but not as who Akigbe actually was. Akigbe was introduced as the head of human resources of PFIPC. Now, remember, Akigbe's real job, on record, was Assistant Director in the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, a completely different institution. Investigators say that introduction was designed for one specific purpose: to help PFIPC's application for an authorized establishment and a recruitment waiver move through Abu's office at the OHCSF. And here is the detail that should make anyone pause. The commission says the authorized establishment was granted on the very same day the 3 officials met. Think about that for a moment. Not weeks later, not after due process and paper trails and verification. The same day, investigators also say they requested the relevant file from the OHCSF to check the process and were told it was missing. Now to the allegation that is going to dominate headlines: money changing hands. The ICPC alleges that Adeyemi paid Patricia Akigbe 500,000 naira during the Easter period of 2025. According to investigators, that payment was reportedly described in communication around it as a "thank you for your support." I want to be honest with you the way any serious journalist should be. This is an allegation from an interim investigation report. It has not been tested in court. But if it holds up, it moves this story from administrative failure into something much more serious: a suggestion of financial inducement tied directly to the approvals that let a fake agency access government structures. The 3 officials, ICPC says, allegedly facilitated the entire approval process through the OHCSF, despite investigators finding no evidence that PFIPC had ever formally applied for those approvals through the required proper channel in the first place. Let's talk about Mimi Abu specifically, because her department is central to this whole picture. Her office at the OHCSF handles establishment matters, manpower requirements, and recruitment waivers for federal government organizations. In other words, if you want your agency formally recognized on paper, her desk is one of the ones you must pass through. According to the report, Achem and Akigbe met with Abu on behalf of PFIPC and presented documents that investigators later described as forged, including the establishment instrument and Adeyemi's disputed appointment letter, the one supposedly signed by the Chief of Staff to the President. Here is something worth noting for balance. Abu herself, according to the ICPC account, described that appointment letter as an aberration and said she could not recall another government organization ever presenting a document quite like it. That is significant because it suggests even the officials involved recognized something was unusual about the paperwork, even as the process moved forward around it. Investigators are the ones who will have to determine exactly what that recognition meant for her role in the outcome.
Now, paperwork is one thing, but this organization also had a physical presence, an actual office inside the Federal Secretariat in Abuja. So how did that happen? The ICPC named an official of the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Aminu Abdullahi, as the person involved in allocating that office space. According to the commission, Abdullahi was introduced to Adeyemi in March 2025 by Ibrahim Abdul Kadir, a deputy director in the General Services Department. Investigators allege that Abdullahi allocated office space previously occupied by the former chief economic advisor to the president, Doyin Salami, at the Federal Secretariat Phase 3 for what was meant to be the temporary use of PFIPC, and that this was done without written approval. And here is a detail that tells you how far this allegedly went. The report claims only 2 keys were initially available for that space, and that Abdullahi broke the locks on other doors so that Adeyemi could access additional office rooms. Locks broken to let a man into government offices for an agency that officially does not exist. Now, let's follow the money on this side of the story too. A review of Abdullahi's bank statement, according to the ICPC, allegedly showed that he received 3,250,000 naira from Adeyemi, paid in 3 installments between March and November 2025. Again, I have to say this clearly for balance. This is what investigators allege the bank statement shows. It has not been proven in a court of law, and none of the named officials has been convicted. But if these figures hold up under scrutiny, what we are looking at is a pattern. Office space handed over without approval, locks broken to grant access, and money moving from the man at the center of the scandal to the official who allegedly made that access possible. This is the kind of detail that ordinary Nigerians should sit with for a second. Because while citizens struggle to get a simple file processed through legitimate channels, a man running an agency with no legal foundation allegedly moved through the same system without official approval with help.
And here is where this story takes an even bigger turn. While digging into PFIPC, the ICPC investigation uncovered another suspected fake government entity entirely, one called the National Brands Development and Made in Nigeria Special Project Office, allegedly operating inside the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the OSGF. This discovery was serious enough that President Tinubu ordered the suspension of 3 permanent secretaries and the arrest of the man identified as the alleged promoter of that entity, George Buchi Noabueze. ICPC Chairman Musa Aliyu said investigators found that Noabueze allegedly operated under different variations of his own name and that suspected collaborators for this second scheme existed inside the OSGF as well. According to the commission, forged legislative instruments were allegedly used to create an appearance of legitimacy for these entities and to help open bank accounts in their names. Now, think about what that means for the country. This is not one isolated case of one man forging one letter. This is now 2 separate fake agencies discovered within the same broad sweep of investigation, both allegedly built on forged documents and both allegedly finding help from inside the system they were trying to infiltrate.
Now, in fairness, and because a balanced report has to include what clears people as much as what implicates them, the ICPC also looked into whether the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, had any hand in Adeyemi's appointment, since the forged appointment letter was made to look like it came from his office. The Commission's finding on that point is clear. No evidence links Gbajabiamila to Adeyemi's appointment. Investigators say Adeyemi personally forged that appointment letter dated March 2024 on a fake State House letterhead and attributed the signature to Gbajabiamila without his knowledge or involvement. The Commission found no evidence that Gbajabiamila ever directly engaged with Adeyemi at all. I raise this because it is exactly the kind of nuance that gets lost when a story like this spreads on social media. Not everyone whose name gets dragged into a scandal is guilty of it. The investigation itself drew that line clearly, and we should report that as firmly as we report the allegations against others. So now the bigger question. How does something like this even get this far? The ICPC's investigation points to a structural weakness, not just individual wrongdoing. Investigators found that existing procedures did not sufficiently require newly established federal institutions to submit and authenticate their establishment documents properly. In other words, the front door for creating a new federal agency was not locked as tightly as most Nigerians would assume. The mechanisms for verifying documents presented by organizations seeking recognition were, according to the report, inadequate. That is the honest, uncomfortable truth sitting underneath every name in this story. Whatever the individual officials did or did not do, a system that allows a forged State House letter to sail through multiple offices without anyone independently verifying it has a problem that goes beyond 4 or 5 people. This is the part of the story that should worry every Nigerian, whether you care about Adeyemi personally or not. Because if it happened once, with this much detail now exposed, the question is how many times it may have happened quietly without anyone catching it.
So where does this leave things right now? The ICPC has recommended administrative action against all 4 named officials: Mimi Abu, Rose Akem, Patricia Akigbe, and Aminu Abdullahi. That is a recommendation at this stage, not a conviction, not even, as far as we know, a formal criminal charge against them yet. As for Adeyemi himself, he has consistently denied any wrongdoing and has maintained that his appointment was legitimate. But the facts on the ground have moved past his denial in one important way. He is currently facing an 8-count charge bordering on alleged forgery, impersonation, and related offenses. That is already before the courts. And the presidency, for its part, has continued to maintain publicly that neither PFICPC nor Adeyemi ever received official recognition under the Tinubu administration. So you have one man saying his appointment was real, a presidency saying it never happened, and now an ICPC report laying out in granular detail exactly how a never-happened agency still managed to get an office, a budget code, and access to government financial platforms.
So where do I stand on all of this, honestly? I think the only responsible path forward now is the one already in motion. Let the courts handle Adeyemi's criminal charges and let due process run its full course for the officials ICPC has named before anyone is treated as guilty in the court of public opinion. Allegations are not convictions, and Nigerians have seen enough big scandal headlines fade into silence to know that follow-through matters more than the first report. But there are real open questions you should keep your eye on. What exactly happens to Achem, Akigbe, Abu, and Abdullahi once the administrative action ICPC recommended is actually carried out? Will any of them face criminal charges beyond Adeyemi's own case? What becomes of the second fake agency, the one tied to Noma Bueze, and will those 3 suspended permanent secretaries face further scrutiny? And perhaps most important for every Nigerian watching, will government actually fix the verification gaps ICPC identified, or will we be back here in 2 years talking about yet another agency that was never supposed to exist? If this story mattered to you the way it mattered to me putting it together, do share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay subscribed because we are going to keep following this one as it moves through the courts. This is Niger News Online, bringing you the facts before the noise catches up. Until next time, take care of yourselves.